And we back with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. What is the cause of 90% of traffic accidents? I've mentioned this before, this little anecdote of when I was a teenager. A friend of ours whose dad was a firefighter, told us that 90% of traffic accidents are caused by someone overreacting to avoid an accident. Overreacting to avoid an accident. You see something on the road, you swerve too much, cause an accident. You think someone's going to hit you from behind and you accelerate forward. That was my first and only accident that I think that I caused. Been in one before, but the one that I caused, I think it's the only one I've caused. It was when I was 16, thought someone was going to ram in the back of our car. So at a red light, I accelerated forward out of that fear and caused the accident with the car in front of me. The car behind me didn't even hit us. It was actually hard to explain to the person I hit in front. My brother, one of my brothers, a year ago totaled his Tesla because he thought in its auto drive, self-driving mode that it was going into a lane improperly, and he used the steering wheel to try to correct it and went too far and wrecked the other side of the car with the car in the next lane, the lane over. That type of thing happens all of the time. But we see it in so many areas of life. So many areas like relationships. You might be dating someone and you're so worried that it's not going to work out, that the constant pressure to get that security, to get those cues that it will work out, that they like you as much as you like them, is what sabotages the relationship. We chatted about it recently in the Venice Vedanta Club, where someone was talking about this, the stat that I had brought up in a previous episode. I had never made it the subject of a full episode, but it's closely related to something that Ram Dass would often say, which is, we create what we protest. He really came up in the 60s and 70s, so he really knew a lot about civil protest. He also was a student of the Gita, of Eastern philosophy, to an extremely high level. So he also knew the unintended consequences of actions driven by attachment, driven by obsession, actions driven by selfishness. He knew them so well that he was able to put them into a really concise, beautiful articulation that so often in life we create what we protest. It could be in a crude way where you have a protest that turns violent and then that sways voters to the thing that you're trying to get out of office. We've seen that before here in America. Protesting that then turns into rioting, that then turns into destruction of property, then shifts people from perhaps social justice towards law and order, and it's the exact opposite result that someone wants. It could happen in nuanced, subtle ways. You try to push a customer at work towards a certain thing and that backfires. You try to create a specific work dynamic where you protest some leader or some approach that is being pushed down everybody's throats. You try to push back on it and somehow it works against you. You have less credibility. The boss maybe gets rid of you. You could have been a credible, valuable voice to shift the direction, but in the absence of wisdom, the absence of intellect, go about it in the very way that causes your efforts to backfire against the results that we want. This happens so often in life. We create the thing we are doing everything we can to avoid. The accident. The relationship not working out. The career going south instead of thriving. And building a company in my 20s for 5.5, 6 years, I remember trying to do everything we could to make it work, obsessively working on it 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day for about 6 years. But that obsession, all of that hard work, pushing us in 3 directions at once, so scared that it would fail that we worked on 3 different objectives at the same time, all hedging, looking back in hindsight with some clarity, with some objectivity, with some wisdom gained in seeing other ways of doing it. I look back and I say, what was I thinking? We create the thing we so often are doing everything we can to avoid. Doing everything for 6 years to avoid failure. Unknowingly creating the conditions for it to take place. So what is the antidote to creating what we protest, overreacting, overcorrecting, and causing the accident we're trying to avoid? What is the antidote to creating the thing that we're trying our hardest to avoid? The antidote is to detach from the outcome. We talk quite a bit about detachment on this podcast. This philosophy of Advaita Vedanta is built on this simple framework that all of our suffering comes from our attachments. But this reflection today goes further than just saying our suffering comes from our attachments, the things we desire, the things we think we can't do without. It goes further in explaining that our attachments to outcomes, a relationship working out, a promotion happening, a company succeeding, not getting in an accident, doing everything we can to not get in an accident, an attachment to a certain set of outcomes creates the conditions for those outcomes to take place. Our attachment to outcomes creates the outcomes we're doing everything we can to avoid. Attachment to finding somebody, push people away. Attachment to success, you push coworkers away. Attachment to winning over a customer, obsession over it. Instead of managing a process, instead of making the product as good as possible, attachment to I need to win this customer over, push them away. So if the antidote to creating what we protest is to detach from the outcome, what do we attach to? In work, the phrase is often fall in love with the process and the results take care of themselves. Fall in love with making the product. Fall in love with the process of 100 customers every week that you're reaching out to, and then you don't have to worry about every single conversation with each customer going right. You just say, okay, yeah, if we close 8% of these, great. We're going to have a really thriving business. Manage the process. Fall in love with the process, and the results take care of themselves. That's the sage business advice. It's the thing we think about at Magic Mind all the time. But the spiritual version of that is surrender to a duty-bound existence, and immediate peace follows. Surrender to our duty-bound existence. This is from chapter 18 of the Gita. Surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. Not only do you get the results over time that you want, surrender to duty, service, you will not. And if you're looking for a partner, you will not be left alone. Surrender to duty and service with your coworkers. You'll get every promotion you've ever wanted. Surrender to a duty, an obligation to your customers. You'll have a thriving business. Like I said, chapter 18 of the Gita, surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. What is so beautiful about that epic direction in life? Both the direction, but I also mean the guidance, the epic guidance in life, is that when we surrender to a duty-bound existence, you get the immediate peace, and you get that prosperity you've been chasing on the other side of it too. Fight for what you want. Don't surrender to a duty-bound existence, but cling on to an obsessive attachment to what you want. Even though the world tells us that's how you get it. If you don't have it, you just got to want it more. That's the romantic philosophy. That your force of will can bring you anything. That if you don't have it, you got to want it more. It takes 30 seconds to outline the examples. Someone that's 5'2" is not going to be the best basketball player in the world. Someone that might be paralyzed from the waist down, someone that might be colorblind, they might not be the best. They will not be the best designer, visual designer, graphic designer in the world. Paralyzed from the waist down, probably not going to win the Tour de France. This is in 20 seconds of imagination. Just wanting something more than everyone around you. That's not going to bring it to you. When we combine our wiring to wanting to serve, attaching to the higher, surrendering to our wiring, what we're wired for, that is, Michael Jordan, I say this story quite often. His first love was baseball. He recognized he was better at basketball. Thank God for us all to get to witness his surrender into what he was better at. And he did try to brute force baseball. For any sports fan, they know how that went. It was kind of a lost year and a half before he returned to basketball. There are many of us, myself included, that try to brute force things we're not wired for out of selfish desire. And there are a handful that tinker, that kick the tires, that try on this idea of, instead of imposing our will, surrendering our skills, ourselves to duty. And they see life flourish. They see that peace. I remember reading the Gita for the umpteenth time, getting through chapter 18, coming across this principle, and surrendering to a call that I had heard for 5 years. Something I did not want to do. Something I talked to my executive coach over and over again about not wanting to do it. Finally, listened to the call, doing what I ought to do, and 45 minutes later, peace I had not felt in 5 years set in. Once I'd surrendered, I was like, I'm not going to get peace from this, but maybe I will 6 months from now. 45 minutes after pushing something off for 5 years, making up my mind saying, okay, this is happening and it's going to eat me alive. 45 minutes later, it was like going down a slide. The universe just started to work for it all instead of against myself, the way I thought it was going to go. From causing a wreck that we're trying our best to avoid, an avoidable wreck, not saying to not correct, but the overcorrection seems to cause a lot of traffic accidents, causing the thing that we want to avoid. From detaching to outcomes from attaching, surrendering to our duty, to where we can be most useful to our communities, most uniquely useful, and surrendering into that towards peace, towards a flourishing life, towards prosperity, which this philosophy says explicitly is what we really want deep down, peace and prosperity. From one side to the other, this philosophy, in a way that I had never heard before, offers this beautiful, elegant guidance from the things we don't want, things we're trying to avoid, how to avoid them, and ultimately towards what we truly want. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.